Good afternoon and welcome to IBA News this Sunday, the 17th of July. I'm Elon Aslan-Levy, joining you live from Jerusalem. We open with news that's just been cleared for publication. 2 IDF soldiers were killed this morning at the entrance to the Hermon military base in the Golan Heights. The 2 have been identified as 20-year-old Sergeant Shlomo Rindenau, an immigrant and lone soldier from New Jersey, and 24-year-old Staff Sergeant Hussam Tafesh of Beit Jan. According to an initial army investigation, the 2 were killed when a grenade exploded. Circumstances of the incident have yet to be determined, and the IDF has launched an investigation. 3 other servicemen were injured in the incident, one of whom is in serious condition. All of the wounded were evacuated to Rambam Hospital in Haifa. The families of the soldiers have been informed. A terror attack on the Jerusalem light rail was thwarted this morning at the very last minute. Security forces arrested a Palestinian man in his 20s as he tried to board the light rail at the Jaffa Street station on the corner of King George Street. The suspect, a resident of the West Bank, raised the suspicions of 2 security guards deployed outside the train stop who stopped him for questioning. The man confessed he was carrying makeshift bombs in his bag, and sappers quickly called to the site found several pipe bombs and knives in the man's bag, managed to defuse the explosives. The area was sealed off to traffic and service on the light rail was partially suspended for a few hours. The suspect was handed over to the Shin Bet security agency for further investigation. Jerusalem Mayor Nir Barkat later invited the 2 guards to his office, where he personally thanked them on behalf of all of Jerusalem's residents. In a statement, Barkat advised members of the public to continue with their routine, remain vigilant and never give in to terror. What a lucky miss. While Turkey reels from the failed military coup attempt on Friday night, there are fears the backlash will push Turkey into further authoritarianism. Israel and other countries have resumed flights, although the US is warning citizens to refrain from visiting. IBA's Margot Dudkevich wraps up the dramatic events.
It was over in hours. A military coup that threatened to topple President Recep Tayyip Erdogan's government ended with the arrests of some 3,000 military plotters, generals, officers and soldiers, and the detaining of some 2,700 judges and prosecutors. A triumphant Erdogan emerged over the weekend. Addressing the public, he vowed that those involved in the failed coup would pay a heavy price. Among the Turkish president's loyalists were those who called to reinstate the death penalty, with some hardliners calling for them to be stoned to death. A defiant Erdogan declared the uprising a gift from God, saying the events emphasized the need to cleanse the country's army and judicial system. Erdogan blamed the failed coup on the supporters of US-based cleric Fethullah Gulen and called on the US to arrest him and extradite him. Gulen, who lives in exile in the United States, fled Turkey after an alliance with Erdogan collapsed during corruption investigations in 2013. Gulen over the weekend denied any involvement in the failed coup.
We fully anticipate that there will be questions raised about Mr. Gulen, and obviously we invite the government of Turkey, as we always do, to present us with any legitimate evidence that withstands scrutiny, and the United States will accept that and look at it and make judgments about it appropriately.
The US and Turkey also traded harsh words after the airbase used by the US Air Force to launch air missions against the Islamic State was shut down and all air operations grounded. Late Friday night, soldiers backed by tanks and military helicopters shook Turkey's 2 main cities, Istanbul and Ankara, as soldiers attempting to seize power blocked 2 Istanbul bridges over the Bosphorus and strafed the headquarters of Turkish intelligence and the parliament in Ankara. Troops also took control of the National State Television headquarters. Istanbul's international airport was shut down, leaving tourists stranded there for hours, waiting to board flights home. All flights to Turkey were suspended, but resumed Saturday. Erdogan was nowhere to be seen, but hours into the coup he finally addressed the nation, from an undisclosed location, speaking on his cell phone's FaceTime app. The dramatic images suggested he was on the verge of losing power, but this quickly proved wrong. Erdogan called on his supporters to take to the streets and stop the overthrow. Thousands obeyed his command and confronted troops, laying on the ground in front of tanks. Early Saturday images emerged of soldiers surrendering to police and armed civilians. In some areas, civilians killed soldiers. In others, soldiers were seen being escorted by police to awaiting vans. Footage showed abandoned weapons, military fatigues and tanks on the roads. While it appears that Erdogan's government has re-established control, many questions remain unanswered, such as who was behind the plot or whether it was a conspiracy orchestrated by Erdogan to strengthen his position. Some express fears that the situation will cause the Turkish president to strengthen his hold on the country, cracking down on any secular sectors of the population who desire to see Turkey move forward, rather than watch it become more radicalized. Margot Dudkevich, IBA News.
Alon Liel, former foreign ministry diplomat and expert on Turkey, says that Erdogan will eventually emerge strengthened from the failed coup attempt. Speaking with IBA's Arya O'Sullivan, Liel urged Israel to cash in and push the reconciliation process with Turkey forward as soon as possible.
I think he will be stronger. He will have the political ability to do what he wishes to do. The question is, where does he pull the strength from here on? And I don't know, because in the last few years, Erdogan was simply paranoid about people who are trying to topple him. And the question is, if this paranoia will weaken or strengthen, I don't know. It's a question to psychologists, not to political scientists.
What do you think about these conspiracy theories that he knew about the coup, he wanted to go ahead so he could crack down?
I think it's ridiculous. Okay. I mean, following so many years Turkish affairs, I can really say that I've never seen something as developed as the Turkish imagination. Unbelievable imagination. And I remember reading books about Atatürk being Jewish and Demirel being Jewish, and I'm sure somebody is writing now the book that Erdogan is Jewish. And so these conspiracy theories, I don't think it's true. And I think there are millions of Turks, and you know, Turkey is almost 80 million people, so there are a few millions who are very frustrated to see the public support that he's getting after this failed. And the easiest thing is he staged it, and I don't think he is that foolish.
Let's get to the Israel-Turkey relations. Israel and Turkey were in the middle of reconciliation. How do you think this whole coup d'etat is going to impact on that progress?
My feeling is that we should cash on it immediately and upgrade the status of the embassies, exchange ambassadors, and worry about these legal aspects later, and maybe also postpone the payment as a result. And I think the teams that worked on it should explore it.
You think that Turkey would be open to this sort of thing?
I think yes, because they really have other things to deal with now, and they wanted this reconciliation, and we wanted it. Otherwise, we wouldn't sign. So I think they will be open to it, and somebody has to initiate such a move now in our Ministry of Foreign Affairs.
What's going to be the fate of the secularists in Turkey?
In the streets yesterday, you could see these secular people were liberals and are opposing a coup. So I think maybe even they will be more not supportive for him, but they will treat him differently now, because to go back to a military regime in Turkey, it looks worse for many of them than having Erdogan.
You've been a diplomat for so long. Were you surprised that this coup d'etat still exists in 2016?
Look, not in the world. Look, Egypt just had a coup d'etat, and everybody likes Sisi, and but in Turkey I was surprised very much, because Erdogan, in his 14 years in power, made the utmost to pull this out of the Turkish DNA, and I think he succeeded. And I think this is a proof that he succeeded.
France is marking the second of 3 days of mourning in the wake of the deadly terrorist attack in Nice on Thursday night. 84 people were killed and scores critically wounded when a terrorist drove a truck into a crowd celebrating Bastille Day. Police have conducted raids across Nice and have arrested 7 suspected associates, including the killer's estranged wife. The attack happened late Thursday night when 31-year-old Mohamed Lahouej Boulel sped a 19-ton hired lorry through a Bastille Day crowd on the Mediterranean city's Promenade des Anglais. The Tunisia-born Frenchman zigzagged for 2 kilometers through the crowds, firing at policemen before he was shot dead. Among the 84 dead victims, 10 children. 303 people were hospitalized on Friday. 121 are still in hospital. 26 are in intensive care, 5 of those children. The Paris prosecutor says Lahouej Boulel was totally unknown to security services, but he had regular run-ins with police. He has been described as a weird and depressed loner, and a former psychiatrist told French press that he had diagnosed the beginnings of psychosis way back in 2004. The Islamic State, ISIS, which was also behind the November Paris atrocities, has claimed responsibility, although it remains unclear whether it had direct involvement. Investigators say Lahouej Boulel's phone records show he was in contact with known Islamic radicals. The attack raises serious questions about France's preparedness to deal with ongoing Islamist terrorism. It has emerged that only 60 police officers were on duty at the site and that police vans protecting an earlier military parade were withdrawn just hours before the attack. Interior Minister Bernard Cazeneuve has called on patriotic citizens to join the reserves, promising to strengthen security forces nationwide. President Hollande had just declared hours before the attack that France's state of emergency would be lifted. With Prime Minister Valls warning that terrorism will be part of our daily lives for a long time, this is unlikely to be the last time that this state of emergency is extended. Israelis rushed to show their support for victims of the Nice attack. Hundreds gathered last night in the city of Netanya, which has a large French community, to take part in a solidarity rally and express their support for France. The French ambassador, Patrick Maisonneuve, addressed the crowd, as did Netanya Mayor Miriam Fierberg-Ikau, who conveyed condolences to the French people. Prime Minister Netanyahu commented on the events in Turkey and France at today's cabinet meeting in Jerusalem. IBA's political correspondent, Kalev Ben-David, has the details. Kalev?
Thanks, Alon. Israel assumes that its reconciliation process with Turkey will continue despite the events taking place there over the weekend, Prime Minister Netanyahu said at the start of today's cabinet meeting. His statement follows an earlier foreign ministry comment made yesterday after it became clear that the coup attempt against Turkish President Erdogan had failed, that Israel respects the democratic process in Turkey and looks forward toward continuing the recent renewal of ties between the two countries. Before the cabinet meeting, I asked Deputy Minister for Regional Cooperation Ayub Kara if the coup attempt could impact on Jerusalem's renewed relations with Ankara.
We are not part in this conflict. I'm sure at last that the relationship between Israel and Turkish become more better, become more strong, because we have important agreement together. We're going to important process economic different with the gas, with other things, and we're sure that the future will be better between Israel and Turkey.
The Prime Minister also commented on Thursday's terrorist attack in Nice, saying it highlights the need for a unified and aggressive strategy against global terror. Netanyahu noted that while both Israel and the Palestinian Authority condemned the attack, there is a difference. Here in Israel, the Palestinian Authority not only does not condemn such vehicular terror attacks, it glorifies the perpetrators as martyrs and encourages them by funding the families of the terrorists. In a separate development, the Prime Minister did not relate to the ongoing investigation surrounding him, which was announced last week by Attorney General Avichai Mandelblit, or the questioning under caution of his former top aide Ari Haro by police on Thursday. According to reports circulating in the local media, Netanyahu is also likely to soon be interrogated under caution by investigators as part of the probe examining whether he or family members personally benefited from unauthorized political donations. Elon?
Kalev, these sound like quite significant developments for the Prime Minister. How serious of a problem is this investigation looking likely to be for Prime Minister Netanyahu?
Well, certainly the Prime Minister has to be disturbed by the questioning of Ari Harrow, who's someone who's one of his really closest associates and really has been followed with him for much of his recent political career, his premiership. However, I want to point out the Prime Minister has been investigated before, he's been questioned before. I really think the only political damage he faces is if this leads to an actual indictment of himself or a member of his family. Otherwise, I don't think it's going to affect him politically.
Back to Turkey. Yeah. Is it really realistic to expect, as we just heard the Deputy Minister told us just now, that political instability in Turkey is unlikely to affect relations between Ankara and Israel?
You know, Alon, I think one area it could affect is the planned construction of a pipeline to bring from Israel's natural offshore gas fields in the Mediterranean into Turkey. That's an important part of the reconciliation agreement. We're talking about investments of billions of dollars. Some of those investments may be spooked.
Why do you expect an impact?
Because you're talking about an investment in building this huge infrastructure project. That's private money, and investors may be spooked by the specter of continued political instability in Turkey. So that may affect that development.
One of the big geopolitical stories of the year. I'm sure we'll come back to it. Thank you, Kalev.
Thanks.
Attempts to erase Jewish and Christian ties to Jerusalem's Old City harm its cultural status as a site sacred to Judaism, Christianity and Islam. This, according to the UNESCO Director General, Irina Bokova, reacting to a draft resolution submitted by Jordan and the Palestinians, challenging the Jewish people's historical ties to the Temple Mount and the Western Wall. The UN body, which is convening in Istanbul, initially postponed the vote on the contentious resolution last week, but could go ahead and vote on it before wrapping up its 40th session, which was cut short due to the failed coup attempt in Turkey over the weekend. Sticking with regional news, and Iran recently conducted its fourth ballistic missile test using North Korean technology. Unnamed foreign intelligence officials said the missile, which has a range of some 4,000 kilometers, exploded shortly after launching outside the city of Isfahan last Wednesday. The test occurred just days before the first anniversary of the Islamic Republic's agreement with world powers to curb its nuclear capabilities. Last week, officials in Iran declared the Islamic Republic will continue developing its ballistic missile program, and this despite UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon's warnings that the missile tests are not in the spirit of last year's nuclear deal. The Ministry of Environmental Protection has launched an investigation into suspected pollution in the Yarkon River. Thousands of dead fish were discovered floating on the river's surface along the Tel Aviv-Ramat Gan border. According to initial findings, the reason is believed to be serious pollution caused by construction of the Tel Aviv metropolitan area's light rail, carried out by the NTA company. In recent years, the river has been undergoing a prolonged process of rehabilitation, with special pipes pumping sewage in a controlled manner, but experts said that apparently something had gone wrong in recent weeks and was only now discovered. Not the cheeriest roundup to start the week. So here are five good things to welcome in the new week. Over 200 Jews to immigrate to Israel this week aboard the largest French Aliyah flight of the summer. Former President Shimon Peres will launch a new Israeli Center for Peace and Innovation this Thursday. The new education hub and visitor center hopes to reshape the future of peace in the Middle East using technology to promote peace and coexistence. And on that note, despite BDS pressure, singer and guitarist Carlos Santana is gearing up for his concert on the 30th of July. Santana is donating his proceeds to the Israeli charity Hand in Hand, which promotes coexistence between Jews and Arabs in 6 schools nationwide. Tel Aviv University has developed a new temporary tattoo, which can help shed light on our emotional well-being. The adhesive electrode patch monitors facial expressions through muscle activity and nerve cells. And finally, a report recently released shows that Israeli exits in the first half of 2016 have so far totaled over $3.32 billion, confirming Israel's place among the world's leading countries in the fields of entrepreneurship and innovation. Moving to finance, shares are down on the Tel Aviv Stock Exchange, and with no currency trading over the weekends, no change in the shekel since Friday. Turning to the weather, and the forecast is calling for more of the same, hot, with no significant changes in temperatures. That's all for today. We'll be back again tomorrow, hopefully with some good news. We leave you now with images of Tel Aviv City Hall, which lit up this weekend with the French and Israeli flags in solidarity with the victims of the attack in Nice. I'm Elon Aslan Levy, wishing you a good evening and an even better week, live from Jerusalem.